March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is dedicated to empowering and educating people that are afflicted with the disease of addiction, the families that struggled with their loved one's addiction, and also for any parents or anyone else that may want to educate themselves on the signs and symptoms and actually what's going on in the nation, because we have a nationwide epidemic with Long Island as the epicenter. On March 14, 2012, I lost my son Thomas to the disease of addiction, specifically a heroin overdose. And I have become an advocate just to bring awareness to the disease and to get rid of the shame and stigma. Tonight, my guests are Detective Pam Stark and Nancy Beckett Lawless from Seafield. So I'd like to, Pam, how are you? Good evening, Nancy.
Good evening. It's good to be here.
Yes. Detective Pam Stark is also just out there on the front lines, an advocate, does amazing work for the police department in Nassau County, and I'm so proud to have you here tonight, and I'm so proud of the work that you do.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Same to you.
So tell us, I know that we sit on the Nassau County Heroin Task Force, and Nassau has been very busy with helping with the epidemic, especially with opiates and heroin. So what is it that you do?
My position in '09, I was requested to come to Community Affairs. I was a detective within the department, and I was asked if I wanted to think about this position where the police department was coming out of the box and they were seeing a large movement of the prescription drugs and heroin out on our streets. And again, seeing addiction in families to a heightened level. So they put together, before I even got there, they had done research on a curriculum. And the curriculum is evidence-based, K through 12. Like in kindergarten, you'd have a puppet, third grade, there's a robot, and it's called Too Good for Drugs. And it's not something that we produced, but it's the Mendez Foundation, and they're out of Florida. And so
And I know that parents struggle with the name,
Yeah.
Too Good for Drugs.
Yeah.
Personally, the words do matter. My son was too good for drugs. However,
Absolutely.
that's the trap, that he fell into. He didn't have that turnoff valve. So from my perspective, as long as there is a curriculum in the school, that should be the most important thing.
And
Would you agree, Nancy?
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
totally understand about the phrasing of it, but it's so much more than its title. Inside the depth of it, it's been in the schools since 1978, over 50 states, 3,000 schools. We're the only police department that I know of that has backed the curriculum. They put aside asset forfeiture money, and they had me go and be train the trainer. And it was just part of a couple of steps that I had to do. And then I hold a 2-day training. The first day is K through 8, and the second day is high school. So I don't teach in the schools, I certify the schools. And we have 56 school districts in Nassau County, and many more private and parochial schools. So I've certified to date, I've had 6 2-day trainings. I've certified all 56 school districts. Probably over 300 administrators. Sometimes they'll send the whole phys ed department, their social workers, health department, however they want to implement it. But once a school is certified by me, then we get a letterhead from their principal or their superintendent stating that they were there, and then we ship one curriculum per school district. And I've certified all 56 schools right now. Then we went further with the education. Again, this was all put together. All the top people had put together what they wanted to do for the education, and it was a video. They wanted to do something in middle school that could change a person's, maybe their first step up those stairs, and how could we do something different. And I had the opportunity with the Too Good for Drugs of meeting people and alternative students. So on our steering committee, we had people that actually had struggled with this, young people. And we asked them, how could we do something different that could have changed your mind, maybe made you think about it a little bit. And they said, well, they thought that they were invincible, like many people, young,
Yes.
right? And that but they did care when they saw mother, father, sister, brother, friends hurt, their relationships, having such a terrible outcome. So in the 3 scenarios on this video that's geared towards middle school, it's on the gateway drugs, weed, prescription drugs, and alcohol.
How about cigarettes?
No, cigarettes is a gateway drug, but we're talking about more mind altering at this point that would actually cause an addiction that could hurt somebody where you commit crimes and everything. So ours is more based on that. So it's on weed, prescription drugs, and alcohol. And in all 3 scenarios, you see the devastations of relationship. And I've hand-delivered it to every school in Nassau County. We've had many requests from all over the country for this. And then my awareness presentation that I put together that I go into schools is basically from working with everybody here, all the people that you're working with on the task force, on summits, coalitions, working closely with our narcotics, exactly what's happening on the latest on the news, going to conferences, putting that all together. And then I update my awareness presentation, sometimes weekly, and put it out there. From our efforts, from the police department's efforts, we were really surprised, but last year we won first place in the world for large agencies. It's the
Wow.
International Chief of Police Awards in 2014. Yes, everybody in the police
That's-
department were very excited about it. What's kind of sad is many police departments aren't doing what we're doing. We're not partnering like how we all meet and we talk, and there's a lot
Well,
of
certainly
places.
Nassau County and Suffolk County make up Long Island. So the 2 counties have to come together and just put everything aside and just do the right thing, because we should have the same in both counties. Same laws, the same efforts, correct? So because if something is passed in Nassau County and not in Suffolk, and or vice versa, I'm going to go across the county line. It's not like it's, that far away that we,
The only thing is that, I don't know if you realize, but the police departments don't make the laws.
No,
We have to implement them, but
I completely
yeah.
understand that, but the the
Yeah.
county execs have to come together, and certainly if it's working in Nassau, then the police department in Suffolk County should also say, hey, wow, we should also do this.
I know that we have a very good relationship with Suffolk. What I noticed is outside of New York, when I come back from like these conferences that I've gone to, I went to that National Prescription Drug Summit. This is my 4th year. And this year they actually asked me to present on our efforts and also on the evolution of opiates, the perfect storm heroin. And there were so many departments that came up to me afterwards, because it's the whole country. They weren't doing anything like we're doing. And so I come back so proud of my department and of the county and everything that we're doing. But of course I know that we just need to do more.
I know in the country, you read an article every single day. Upstate New York, very heavily hit.
Yeah.
All rural America, the Midwest, correct? It's crazy what's going on. So we all need to come together and share ideas. Because they may have an idea and we'll come away with one also. But everyone has to step up and do their best. we are definitely losing a generation of kids.
I heard a governor in the Midwest speak at the National Prescription Drug Summit 2 years ago, and he said that he lost his workforce. That's what he stated. I was just blown away. And then what happened is they sued a lot of pharmaceutical companies. There are different states that have. And he used his monies to put it into recovery, which is wonderful.
They're
But-
doing that up in Massachusetts now, I do believe, that you can go into the precinct with your drugs, your paraphernalia, and turn it in and say, I need help. And the police department will walk you through the
Oh, I
system,
heard that.
bring you to detox, and make everything happen for you. What a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Because kind of like the Good Sam law, you know, if you call 911, correct, you're not in any trouble. If you're with anyone that's overdosing or binge drinking or anything like that, the person who calls, correct, is not in trouble?
Is not in trouble unless they're they're at a level of dealing. But
Okay.
normal amounts of a user would use, no.
Okay.
We're only there to help the person and hopefully save a life.
Okay. Wow.
That's been, I think that's since 2011 that was
Yes. I
think so.
instituted, right?
Yeah.
That's been a long time. The county went forward and Nassau, and they put it on the buses, inside the buses, don't run, call 911. In all my awareness presentations, I constantly am driving this home when I'm in schools and such. I mean, John
I
Bon
know-
Jovi's daughter, I
Yes.
think,
Yes.
right?
She
I mean,
did.
she lived because of that law. That was wonderful.
That was great, but Natalie Chiappa,
Yeah.
you know, going back, did not.
No.
So last summer, I do know that a young man in Comac also, his friends left him in a park
Really?
because they were also probably using substances that, you know, certainly alters your train of thought and not the best thing to do. But they get scared and they run. But hopefully, if someone's listening right now, call 911,
Don't run.
don't run, save a life, and you're not in any trouble,
That could change that person's future forever.
without a doubt.
And that's a law that's been passed in New York State, so the same is in existence for Suffolk
Yeah.
County.
Yes.
In fact, Suffolk County really liked the idea of what Nassau County did with that public awareness
No.
campaign, you know, don't run, call 911. There's a group in Suffolk County, it's called Communities of Solution. And they've been meeting since 2008. They meet monthly. In fact, right now, they're meeting at the county office building where drug and alcohol, community mental hygiene services is located. And that group of stakeholders is looking at any way that they can improve access to treatment and quality of care. So the initiative that they're going to be working on is a very similar public service campaign. We're in the process right now of having posters made, and we're hoping to be able to use that same idea and get them on buses and maybe even the trains that will let people know that it is safe to call. If they come upon someone who is overdosed, or if they come upon someone who is consumed too much alcohol.
Oh, sure.
You know, you can't leave that person safely because they can aspirate. So they need to call. They need to make that phone call, and that's the message we have to get out there.
I thought that
Absolutely.
Suffolk had it. I'm a Nassau County detective. I lived in Nassau. I now reside in Suffolk. I love Long Island. Isn't that what we're all here for?
That's
That
what
is
we're
what
all
we're
here
That's
for.
what we're all here
That's what
for.
we're all here for. We have to, you know, what a great place we live.
Yes, it is.
After Memorial Day weekend, being at the beach, being in the sun, that's why we're all here. But we also have way too much access to too many things that are going on. I just read Northport man was arrested. He robbed a pharmacy in Port Jefferson yesterday or today. He robbed money and asked for opiates. So he
I
left
didn't
with
hear
3
that.
bottles of opiates. He has subsequently been caught, but there's the desperation.
No injuries?
No,
Thank God.
Thank God. Thank
God.
God. So, but
Yeah.
now to convince him that he needs treatment.
I'm seeing more and more arrests going on. I mean, you saw that arrest that Nassau had, I think it was
Yes.
like last week, right? Where they had the heroin that was stepped on with fentanyl, which
Yes.
is deadly. I mean, there's, you wonder why anybody, it's not even a marketing concept. You're killing your customers. And that same, I was showing that, I have that in my PowerPoint already, into the schools, and I try to explain to the young people, okay, these are the people that are dealing drugs and that you think you can trust putting these chemicals into your body. when their side business was to take dogs and they actually sewed their mouths shut, and they would put, it was like the donor dog, and they would put a dog in sewed mouth and let the other dogs maul it. And these are the same people that we arrested that were dealing a lot of heroin and opiates. So I try to ask them, would you feel safe
Right.
with what their decision making is? That's the cruelest thing. But if you're killing human beings with fentanyl,
You can, well, you know,
And then
heroin
watching a dog-
is a substance that, you know, in and of itself
Yep.
is bad enough. That's why when they say it was a bad batch of heroin, I don't
Yeah.
really, I'm not aware of a good batch of heroin. So,
I think the other point that we really need to get across to those that are using heroin, because they are, we all know that, if they've been off of heroin for a few weeks, for example, if they've been in a treatment facility for 3 or 4 weeks, or off of heroin for a period of time, if they go back and they use again, they want to go back to use the same amount of heroin that they did before they went into treatment. And that amount of heroin can kill them, because their body does build up a tolerance to it. And by taking that heroin, you know, when their tolerance has been built up, it will stop the respiration, and it could lead to death. So it's really important to get that message out there. It's never safe to use heroin. It's especially not safe after they've been off of heroin for
Yeah.
a period of time.
yeah.
We see a lot of people that overdose that are right out of recovery or have been abstinent from the heroin and then go back and use.
That was
And that's
my
when the
son's
Narcan-
stories.
It was.
Yeah, that was my son's story. So he returned home on the 13th of March and was going to his sober living the next day and thought one more time. And that one more time did not happen.
And Linda, how long had he been in treatment, that period?
21 days.
Okay.
So he was detoxed and back. And, you know, that's just something that also has to change. We need earlier intervention with appropriate level of care. To have someone with a heroin addiction, especially injecting, not going to be cured or really out of the fog in 21 days. And you can correct, you're in the treatment field. That's just my humble opinion, but I can't see that happening. So 21 days is,
No, I mean, I think of a young person especially that's already gotten to the point where they're using heroin. It's very difficult for them to come off, and they need a period of time to get them off. Their brains have not been formed yet, so they can become addicted to the opiates much faster than they can as an adult. And you know, the evidence-based practices talks about with adolescents longer periods of time for treatment. As you know, we've talked about it before here, even on this TV show, that laws were passed last June that deal with insurance companies paying for treatment and helping people access treatment sooner. Up until April 1st of this year, if someone was addicted to an opiate and they needed to get into a detox or an inpatient rehab, their insurance company wouldn't allow them to, because the withdrawal from opiate, they say, is not life-threatening. And yet, as we're talking
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
you know, it absolutely is. I sit on the Substance Use Disorder Work Group. It's an oversight committee to look at the laws that were passed last year and make sure that all the holes have been closed. And one of the moms that also sits on that committee is a woman by the name of Nora, and we all know her. We've worked with her
Yes.
for a while. And Nora came to the meeting last Thursday, running a little bit late. She's a critical care nurse at a hospital in the Bronx, and she said she couldn't get out because she had to intubate a woman that was admitted that morning at 6 o'clock, and she was being intubated and put on life support because of a heroin overdose. And it is life-threatening.
Yes.
And to be able to not give someone the medication that they need when they come into a hospital and they're in withdrawal, it's really inhumane. So laws
it's
have been
inhumane, and
passed.
it's also when they're going to go out and use. That it's excruciating. I mean, I witnessed it. They feel like their skin is crawling, the sweats, the vomiting, the pain. Their bodies feel such tremendous pain. It's crazy.
So the laws have been passed, and from the initial things that we're beginning to hear back is that it has made a difference already. It's getting somewhat easier for people to be admitted to detox and to inpatient rehab.
And for longer periods of time?
And we're seeing some longer periods of time. I think we're just going to have to keep pushing.
We have to push. We have to push because Their new thing is, though, the insurance company is, everyone is appropriate for medicine-assisted treatment. But the doctor that is prescribing whatever the medicine is, Suboxone, Vivitrol, whatever that may be, it has to be in conjunction with treatment. And I think that the insurance company doesn't care about the treatment piece as long as they say they did something for them.
Oh, okay.
But one without the other is not going to work long-term. Is that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is a push towards medication-assisted treatment. And some people can really go through it, and they have a stable, supportive environment that they return to at the end of the day, and it can work. But for many of them, they really do need to be in an environment where they can be stabilized away from their family and friends, receiving the care that they need at the beginning stage of their recovery.
well, if you take an addict and then you give him a prescription and say, take this responsibly, kind of a little silly. I mean, if ever there was a moronic statement, that would be it. You know, we know you're a drug addict, you have a problem taking drugs, but now we need you to be responsible. And by the way, you need to show up at meetings also every day. They need to be worked into that.
And again, I know sometimes parents are out there and they're listening to this and they get very, very frightened, and rightfully so, because we are in the middle of an epidemic right now. But we have to remember that the kids are not starting with the heroin,
No.
usually the young people.
No.
It usually is the gateway drugs that we've talked about already. They'll have a cigarette, they'll have a beer, they'll smoke pot at some point. From pot, it seems to be prescription pills. They'll get
Well,
the
we're
pills
seeing
from-
that is a gateway drug, and prescription drugs have the same type of effect, right, on the receptors on
Yes,
NADA
they do.
as the heroin. So if that's become the gateway drug, it's going so fast, right? Right to the starting line.
When we get back, we're going to talk about the drug reclamation also. I
Okay.
think that's important to bring up right now. And then we'll talk about some family support.
Okay.
This part has been brought to you in part by Shield Laboratory. Shield, a respected choice for quality clinical diagnostics. Shield is quality assured. We'll be right back.
$1.3 million women are victims of physical assault by an intimate partner each year. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the majority of cases aren't reported to the police. Most people who are in an abusive relationship don't even know they're in one. The truth is, all abusive relationships boil down to one thing: control.
How do you like it? My new dress.
Are you out of your mind? You look like a prostitute. We're not going out with you dressed up like that in public.
But what am I supposed to wear?
Wear something decent. You can't wear that out in public. We're going to be late. Get back in there and pick a different outfit. I'm going to go run some errands. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Please be ready, okay?
Fine, I'll change. Fine.
Abuse is not always physical, leaving wounds that are visible on the outside. Emotional abuse is just as painful, only these wounds are hidden on the inside.
Are you out of your mind? You're crazy. You look like a prostitute.
Know that abuse is abuse, no matter what the form.
Look at me.
Oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Physical abuse scars the body,
I just wanted to love me.
but mental abuse scars the mind.
What you just saw was an example of a relationship that is emotionally abusive. Nobody has the right to tell you how to dress or how to act. If someone really cares for you, they won't tear you down. They will build you up.
How do you like it?
Wow. You look great. Fantastic. But then again, you look great all the time.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd like it. It's my new dress. I bought it just so we could go out tonight.
You look stunning.
Thank you. But I think I'm going to take a sweater just in case it gets cold tonight.
Great idea. I'm going to take one too. Let's go.
All relationships are not perfect, but a healthy relationship is when two people bring out the best in each other and have each other's good in mind. Take your time to know someone instead of rushing into something. It is better not to involve yourself with an abusive person than to try and get out of a domestic violence situation.
If someone is abusive to you and you need help, please call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. They have highly trained experts available 24/7 who will speak with you confidentially and offer information regarding the unhealthy aspects of your relationship, resources, or immediate support for victims to find safety and live lives free of abuse. Domestic violence affects us all.
It affects us all.
Nos afecta a todos.
It affects us all.
모두에게 영향을 줍니다.
Che ci ricarte tutte.
It affects us all.
Domestic violence.
That's Renee. Victor. We don't do the coins.
Welcome back. I'm sitting here with Nancy Beckett Lawless and Detective Pam Stark, and we're going to continue our conversation. Pam, well, actually, both of you.
Okay.
We have a great, we have to lock up our medicines,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to turn them back in. And again, this summer, I'm going to urge all parents, please, if your kids are getting their wisdom teeth out, 90 Percocet is not required for that. I'm just going to, be aware of what your kids are being prescribed and question what your children, you, everyone in your family, everyone, we have to be much more diligent and don't take anything for granted. So that's my little shot on that, but
Well,
drug
you're right.
reclamation.
Well, we have every community center and precinct has the drug take back, and they're big green bins. Once you go into a lobby, you can't miss it in any of our locations, and nobody's looking to see who your name is or what have you. We ask for no liquids or no needles. I do know that Suffolk has the same things. And then we also have drug take-back days where we're doing, in front of schools and things like that. I mean, there's a listing. I do believe Nassau County actually has it on the website, the drug take-back days. So we're out there. The DEA kind of pulled out of it, and Nassau took, their lead and going with it. We've always partnered. Suffolk always had a partner with them also, because it's very dangerous when you have that many drugs and you're out there and you're taking it back, and if you have no law enforcement and you do have a disease of addiction, could take control of that bag. So you have to make sure.
Yeah. Well, I know many grandparents, they may not be aware of their grandchildren or anyone else coming to their house and taking their medication. And I don't, are the kids still doing the party with the bowl?
Well, the young people that I've spoken to, they said that was our kind of made up
Oh, interesting.
picture of it.
Okay.
The young people that I've worked with are actually in recovery and said, we wish it was that pretty. We wish it was that thought out. It was more like just take, more of a Russian roulette than a pretty party bowl.
Wow.
So they were very honest with me. There was a young girl that I met that had she was at a party drinking for the first time. She's from Queens, and she had moved to Nassau. She was at a party, and she got a pill. Now, meanwhile, she was not a partier before, wasn't too sure what she was feeling. And the pills that she ended up having was from this young man's grandfather's dialysis medication. So it isn't that bowl, right?
Right.
We made it so much prettier than it
Right.
was. It is more like off the cuff, and we're just using, and not really knowing what they're doing. Russian roulette is, I think that would be the correct name for it. So we have that. We also have an anonymous drug testing, and that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If anyone's to find any kind of drug, prescription drug, street drug, and you wanted to test it, call up the local precinct, and I would advise you to get the police officer's name when you call. You don't have to give them yours because it's anonymous. Tell them that you're coming down with something you want to test it. You have it in an envelope. You decide your code number that you're going to have. Sealed. You're going there. And you hand over. And then after 10 days, you would call our narcotics, which is 573-3400. And then you would find out exactly what they tested at no cost and anonymous.
Wow, that's
That's great, right?
That's great.
If you come across some drugs in your teenager's bedroom, and you don't know if it really is a drug, you don't
You
know
can
what
do
it
that.
is, it could be just a substance, you can just bring it in.
Yes, you
It's
can.
great.
That's
You
great.
can have it tested. And I do know of one lady that I'm close with, had it done, and it was for her grandchild, and she thought it was something else, so it actually relieved any kind of concern with...
Absolutely.
But then I had said to her, if you're thinking, if you're at that point where you're seeing any kind of behavior change, I'm not saying to test on your own, okay? I don't know, because sometimes young people have told me that if it doesn't come up positive, then our respect level is gone. There is no honesty. And I said, all right, well, I'm a police officer. I'm also a mother. But I do know if you feel like there's something wrong,
There is something wrong
Yeah.
already.
then maybe you should seek out some professional counseling, which I think is so important for family members. And I say it all the time whenever I'm presenting. It's not only for the person using. Everybody in that family needs help. Everybody.
And again, I can speak for myself. You know, going through it and having two other kids, they had feelings. You know, I'm the mom. I'm a single mom trying to deal with one child really rolling out of complete control and going to work and having to be, you know, be very focused at work. And
Yeah.
my house could have been being robbed every day of anything could have been going on in my house. But my other two children coming home to that house and not knowing what they were going to walk in on. You know, all of those things going on. And the siblings, a lot of feelings of anger towards why is he or she doing this to our family? Why is he or she doing this to our family? Not realizing the full impact. But their voices are important, and their anger and whatever issues and their you know, they have feelings, they're scared that they're going to lose their sibling, or, you know. So I know how important family
dynamics is, I would
Everything.
think, everything.
Do you
Right.
see that at Seafield?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think this is a subject that's really near and dear to my heart. I'm a person in long-term recovery from the family side of the disease of addiction, and many decades. And you know, I think back to when it was in my own family when I was growing up. That's something that's never talked about. You know, if a child is experiencing someone in their family using drugs or alcohol, it's not talked about. You learn to begin to adapt to what you see. I can remember saying things to my mother when I saw that she was upset, and I had no idea what she was upset about, but I would say to her, you know, what's wrong, Mom? You know, she was crying, and she would say, nothing, everything's okay. And I got the message that you didn't ask questions and you really couldn't talk about it. And it wasn't anything that was talked about in the family, so as a child of an alcoholic, we learned to not ask questions.
And what happens in this house stays in this house.
Secrets are very, very important.
Yeah.
And you learn, you always cover those secrets. You do whatever you can. So I love the fact that you're going into school and talking about this to kids, because they have to have a place that they can actually talk to other people about what's going on. And we know that there's so much shame with addiction, that even that, they probably don't until it comes to the point they really have no place else to go and they have to talk about it. But family treatment is so important, and it's important for the family to get in treatment whether their loved one who's using is in treatment or not.
Exactly.
And I hear so often people say, but I really don't know if my husband's an alcoholic, or I don't know if my dad has a problem. If a family member is having a problem, there's a problem. There's a problem that they have to deal with, and there's help available to them.
But even if you're not sure whether the loved one has a problem or not, you're having a problem.
So
And
that's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Your your health and well-being have to take first and foremost, because if you're not well, you can't help everyone else that you're going to come in contact with. So very important.
There were young people. I started to actually do the awareness part of this job in 2010, and I would go out and I would speak to adults and I would speak to all different audiences, because it's not just schools, it's everywhere. And I noticed when the parents or the families, even this young man who's really, he just stuck in my mind, and he was telling me, well, why would I have to have our family go? And he was speaking on behalf of his mother standing there, when it's his fault. And I said, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm from a family of addiction, and I needed to go. And I can't tell you that how much that it has helped me is amazing. And back then, we didn't talk at all. We wouldn't have had, we wouldn't all been sitting here, and it was treated differently. I don't think that I ever felt that there wasn't a stigma. I never addressed that to my mother. My mother had I guess I can say it. I mean, she was an alcoholic. She was in recovery. I had shared this with you. 40 years. She just celebrated February 27th.
Wow.
So the problem was with me, my dynamics with my mom is my brothers were 10 and 13 when I was born. And my youngest brother came to me, he was 10 years older. And they said, when they heard that she was pregnant with me, they said, why are they bringing another person into this hell? And I can say that without feeling hurt by it, because I was so excited to be, that never fazed me. I know maybe somebody else that would have hurt their inner soul, but to me it didn't. I understood where they were coming from, but I also lived a totally different generation than my brother did, because when I came along, I guess she was really into the throes of it. And she was out of the house more. So I didn't see the mom, nurturing mom, and then all of a sudden see her pathway out. It was already pretty much there. It was out. And she would go out, I guess 3 or 4 days, she'd be gone, then she'd come back, then she'd be gone. She was not a violent woman whatsoever, nothing like that.
But wow, when you're a little kid, and, by the grace of God, I didn't grow up with that, but I know how important, how when I was little, that security feeling that you have, that your mom and dad are there for you.
I had that with my dad, though.
Right. Well, thank God you had it with your dad. And it sounds, Nancy, like you had it with your mom.
Absolutely. And I had an extended family that was just incredible.
And I have, yes, my father's side. I can't say that for a second that I don't feel like I had like the best childhood. And when I
That's
met,
right.
And when I met people, because we lived on this block for many years in Hyde Park, and people would, now when my mom left, it was first day of I was 9 years old of school, and she didn't say goodbye this time, and my dad was crying, and I came home, and he said, Pammy, I think she's gone far this time. She went to the airport. And we weren't really going on planes back then in the 60s, so I have to say I was so relieved. And I felt bad for him that he was crying, and I thought, this is going to be relaxing, because there was so much chaos with that. See, I saw it differently, and when my neighbors would, I could tell they were a little bit nicer to me, and I wanted them to know, no, this is better. I feel so much better now. The house is clean, it's organized. We're not waiting for something to just blow up. It always was a crisis.
For myself and other parents that I speak to, when a child or their loved one goes into treatment, it's probably the first time that you're going to sleep in a very long time, and that you know that they're safe someplace and they're not just not coming home, that you know where they are, that they're safe and in treatment. So I know exactly the feeling that you're describing.
And I probably didn't feel like he did when she was gone for periods of time. I felt the peace.
Yeah.
I remember when I would see her back, and I loved her. I mean, there's no way I mean, I've always loved her. We didn't get along. I never felt comfortable to depend upon her. From as little as I can remember, I always went to my dad. He was a wonderful man, had a great upbringing. But when she got back into my life, I think she got sober it was in 1975, so I was 15. But I wasn't told right away. I think everybody was making sure. Not so much my father. My father never put her down. He only said she was ill, and we never discussed what the illness was when she was gone. He said to pray for her. I never heard any bad talk about her. He never went on in any kind of deliberation.
You know, the
he was an
sad thing
incredible man.
is that if your loved one has cancer, has diabetes, has any number of diseases, a community will come together and throw a spaghetti dinner for you. But when you have the disease of addiction, there's shame and stigma attached to that family. They're doing something wrong. Well, no parent does anything wrong. No child does anything wrong. Because I've done presentations and sometimes kids will say, what do I do with my mom or dad? And that so breaks my heart that a 15-year-old is, you know, coming to school, and school may be the first time that they see a smiling face.
Yep.
Or the first time that they get, good morning, you look nice today, or, you know, having a meal at lunch. So it's crazy. So we have to get rid of that shame and stigma because it's more normal to have someone struggling with the disease of addiction than it is not to have someone struggling. I believe that 99% of all people know someone that has struggled with this disease, and the other 1% just doesn't want to admit to it.
This is my perception as a person who had a family member. I feel when I come up to a person and I see that they have like a stigma or shame against it, I don't find that they're educated in it.
Yes.
And I feel that they're stagnated in it, and they won't open up to it. And sometimes it's a person that you would least expect because I think they can't believe that they're in the throes of it. I see actually family members that, oh, it's terrible, because they haven't embraced it and realized, okay, this is what it is. And you know what, recovery, I believe in it. I mean, look, I had 40 years. My mother and I didn't have the perfect, we weren't, you know, the Waltons, but I had 40 years, and she taught me that you can change anything, and just so proud. I couldn't believe she actually gave up smoking cigarettes also, and she did it from the ground up. She never had any help. She did it all in Florida. When I first went to visit her, I was 17, and she was cleaning motel rooms. And she asked me, she said, Pammy, can you help me? I've got to clean a motel room? You had to see my face. Oh, gosh. And I remember just looking at her and seeing her in a different light, and she was totally
She was
driving.
happy.
Oh, and she was driving her. She was just like so, and so she was 90, going to be 91 when she passed, and she drove her car at the end, and right to the end, she lived on her own. She was very, very involved in her 12-step program, also with young people whose families have some type of addiction, disease. She would read to them. She'd always give her time, and I saw her in a lot of different lights. So maybe it wasn't a prom dress, right? But I learned a lot of other things from my mom.
Absolutely.
You know what I love? I love that statement I hear often, that when one member of the family recovers, the family begins to recover. It can be any one member,
Yes.
but when one member recovers, it starts the process. And again, it does not have to be that person that's suffering from drugs and alcohol addiction to be that person. It can be a family member. And I love when you talked about, your face lights up when you're talking about your mom in recovery. Because that's what happens. The family recovers, and we begin to recover, and our memories recover. And you can see that there are so many gifts that you received in this process. And a family that gets into recovery goes to places where there's other people that are just like them, and almost immediately it's like there's a sense of coming home. That there are other people who've gone through what I've gone through, and they're not sitting here crying. They're not waiting every single night for that person to come home. They're not afraid. They're happy. They're living life to the fullest. And that's a gift that they got back once that family member got themselves into recovery.
I think it's so important with the disease to have your own boundaries. For you, what's okay for you? Because I know you can't have that chaos in the house always. Everyone is entitled to come home to a safe home and be okay. And if you are dealing with the disease of addiction as a family member, at least you have your own boundaries, you have your own toolkit to go to handle the situations that get thrown at you, that you're not feeling defeated.
Yes.
And as we know, the person that's addicted is usually the one that gets all the attention in the family.
Yes.
So
And all the treatment.
all the treatment, all the other people are just kind of making their way through. In fact, in adult children groups, they talk about the different roles that family members take.
Oh, yes.
I don't remember them all, but I know that there's a role that's a hero, there's another role that's a mascot, there's a scapegoat,
Yes.
and I don't
Yes.
remember the other.
And there's the caretaker,
The
right?
Yes, and they can go back and forth. So at one
Oh,
moment,
yes.
the child or the adult can be the hero, and the next moment, they're the scapegoat or the mascot. So it's really important for the, if you grew up in a dysfunctional home, and it can be any kind of a dysfunction, but especially addiction, help is available.
Yeah.
It's just, you just have to do it. You have to make, like we said before, about what did you say, make that call?
Oh, yes. Don't run, call 911?
Yeah.
Is that what?
That's what I was thinking.
But when I'm working with people, I can't express it enough. And I think that's when, because I was put in this position, I didn't even think that my own personal life was coming here. I just thought, oh, it's another police department position. Oh, this sounds wonderful. And I love young people, and I'm realizing it's not just young people, it's all ages. And then when I was out there working in the field, all of a sudden I started to identify, and I wanted to tell them, trust in yourself, because treatment for yourself it's major empowering, and you can feel so comforted at night, where you're not so afraid of everything, or even feeling that you
didn't cause it,
yes,
and you can't cure it, and it's okay. It's okay. It's just something, it's a disease that happened in your family.
There's another C, it's can't control it.
Can't
and
control
that's
it.
a
Powerless.
big thing that the
Yeah.
families try to do is control. They'll do anything they can to stop that person that they love from using.
Yep.
And they learn when they walk into, into recovery that it wasn't their fault and they can't control it. And just being able to realize it's like taking a deep breath after you've been trying to do something for so many years. Like, I didn't cause this. It's not my fault. And you can just begin to let go and keep the focus on yourself and live your own life. And sometimes when the family members change their behavior, sometimes their loved one gets into recovery.
Absolutely.
I've heard a lot of times.
I'm going to hold you on
Okay.
that. We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Stretching under sedation or manipulation under anesthesia is a very gentle, very precise procedure to very slowly release any scar tissue that is formed as a result of a traumatic injury. Many people ask, how does this work? Will I get hurt? Will you stretch me too far? We only stretch the body part to its normal range of motion. After completing the post-MUA rehabilitation program, it's very common that our patients say to us, hey, I can play ball with my kid again. Hey, I can bowl again. Hey, I can enjoy hiking again. This is what makes it rewarding to us as practitioners.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is Lee GMC in the place to be, the greatest MC in history. There will never be an MC greater than me. And right about now, the only place for you to be is with the one and only Madhouse TV. You are the man.
Long Island Crisis is being sponsored in part by Shield Laboratories. Shield is a full-service clinical laboratory that places the need of each individual patient first. Shield, a respected choice for quality and efficiency while utilizing the most advanced technology, makes Shield a respected choice for quality clinical diagnostic. Shield is quality assured. Welcome back, and I'm still here with these two wonderful ladies that have been so honest with their own families. And if we don't start talking about it, and people, I know this, that certainly I live in Kings Park, so many people affected in Kings Park by this disease, and nobody wants to talk about it. And the old superintendent of the schools used to say, if we talk about it, people will think we have a problem. We have a problem. You just have to read the obituaries for God's sakes. So to see new educators come in and new administration come in and say, we need to empower our students, our faculty, our parents, that this is happening. And if you change one person's mind tonight about, and I hope that there are many 12-step programs out there, many family programs that are free. Anybody can Facebook message me to Thomas's Hope, and I'll put you in touch with some great programs, because that's where the healing starts. That's where, when you are educated on the disease of addiction, you can really understand it's not a moral failing on the part of the patient. It's not a choice. I know that, my son would say, imagine taking a box of X-Lax and then telling me not to use the bathroom. It would be the equivalent of that. So it's not a choice. It's a need. It's a drive. It's a brain disease, right, Nancy?
It is, and I'm just thinking, it's not a weakness either. That's what
No.
I thought my father had. I thought he had a weakness. And I was just thinking this today, and I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to mention it. My dad was a World War II veteran. My dad fought, he flew the Burma Hump, that's what they called it. He was, for a period of time, stationed in India. He was so proud of the fact that he served this country in World War II. He was also an extraordinarily bright man. He received a full tuition scholarship to a school of pharmacy. He didn't accept it because
Wow.
that same year he lost his dad. And he felt like it was his part to give back and take care of his mother and his sisters. So he didn't accept that. He was not a weak man. He
No.
was a very strong man who happened to have a disease. And
Yes.
when he started to drink, he couldn't stop. And that's not a moral failing.
Again, I look at it, imagine that switch. It doesn't go off. Not everyone that's going to start to drink or smoke cigarettes or smoke pot is going to be afflicted with the disease of addiction. However, if you are, then it's off to the races, and it's not their choice anymore. One time may have been their choice. I know my son made a mistake at a very young age, as kids will do, but that shouldn't be a moral failing on his part. He shouldn't be looked at as as a dirtbag, is really what they start to think of themselves as. And that's terrible.
It is.
Because now you have a disease beating you down, and your self-esteem gets beaten down, and why should I get well? Nobody's going to believe in me anyway. And all of those things start to come together.
Oh, yes, and then because I would see my mother's self-esteem, even when she was in recovery early on, and she would talk about it, she had a lot of guilt, I guess, leaving her daughter. And even when I told her, we started to really meet up, I would fly down to Florida and see her. I was 17. And I think she didn't know our place. I felt comfortable in our place. But she had already mothered 2 sons, right? And now she wanted to, but I don't think she knew how to. And it hurt her more. And then we would fight, just like mother and daughters do. And she would want me to live with her. And I'd be like, no, I'm living on my own or whatever. And she took that more of a personal thing. But when we've come through many, many years, as I said, it was just 40 years she celebrated, and I told her about my position. Now, my mother, I'm sure, did not want me to be a police officer. And she was terrified, and but when I got this position, she said, Pammy, you can do some change. I said, well, Mom, I said, we're talking about prescription drugs and heroin. And she said to me, what was she, 86 at the time? There wasn't heroin offered to me, Pam. If it was, I probably would have used it.
Wow.
And that's an 86-year-old lady who
Yeah.
drank wine. And I hear people say, well, I only drank wine. And she said, what's the difference? I was a drunk at wine. And it was never her choice. So when she said that to me, I just totally understood. And she said, I just couldn't feel sometimes. I wanted to. She would tell me that she would pray in the bed, I'm not going to drink today, I'm not going to drink. And then she would just fall down. And then I think those times that she would, she wouldn't feel good about herself because she had promised herself she wouldn't. So you have a lot of time that you have to build yourself back up.
We can go be as simple as how many people are successful at staying on a diet?
Oh, exactly.
I want to lose 15 pounds. I'm never going to eat cake. I'm not going to eat cake. I'm not going to eat cake. And then you eat cake. It's okay. Relapse may happen.
Yeah.
Part of the disease. It's how you pick yourself back up and get back into treatment is really the key.
I'm so grateful you're doing this show, Linda, because I in my lifetime, my dream is that people will begin to realize that the disease of addiction is a normal disease.
Oh, yes.
And that shame will be eradicated and people will be able to recover from addiction just like they're recovering from the other diseases that we discussed. There's no place for the shame to be there any longer.
There isn't, and if it means your loved one's life or being embarrassed, I don't care. And I've said it before, I know who I am. People who know me know what I stand for, how my children were raised, what my values are, my integrity. Anyone else that wants to criticize me from the outside, you go right ahead, because you have no place in my world anyway, and it just doesn't matter to me. That's how I'll stand tall, because you wouldn't, again, strangers would be fine if my loved one had some, diabetes or cancer or any other crazy disease. They would reach out and do a fundraiser for you. But, all of a sudden to shame someone for that, terrible. Oh, it has to be their fault. It's, a divorced family. It's this, it's that. It could be. It has, I know plenty of families that look like they're the Brady Bunch from the outside, and on the inside, not a good place to be.
Well, I think in the alcoholic home, I think they spend a lot of time in the addicted home making everything look good because they don't want anybody to know that this is happening. So oftentimes the families that have the disease of addiction in their home are the families that look the best on the outside. And on
My
the inside,
family,
they're
I think
suffering.
my mom tried to portray that my dad was like a meanie, and that's why she always had to leave. And she was frightened. And then people would say, well, then why are you leaving your daughter?
Right.
So it didn't really make too much sense.
Yeah.
But you know what? She wasn't really thinking straight. And you would talk about relapse. I really wasn't around for it because, as I said, when she left when I was 9, I didn't see her again until I was 16. Didn't even hear from her. And I was told that she did try to go into recovery in whatever way. And my brothers were contacted by her, and they wanted to make sure. And my brother came back from Florida and said, I saw Mom. Oh, really? He came to my dad's house. And he said, yes, she even has Easy Does It on the bumper sticker. What's that mean, Ken? Stinkin' thinkin'. And I was like, what's that? Of course, I know all those phrases today. But we started to realize she started to talk it. It wasn't just going into recovery.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I did notice. My mother lived her life in recovery. She wanted it, just like cleaning those motel rooms. She ended up going to college, getting her master's, and she was so self-made. There was that co-occurring addiction. I did see that because she said that even when she was younger, she always just felt different. She
Nancy, you have one. I know, this is something that's near and dear to my heart too, is getting the families well, and that's so key and so important. Any final words from you on
Just
that?
the final words. If there's anybody out there that's listening to this and now they don't know where to turn, if they live on Long Island, there are a lot of treatment centers that are offering free family series for parents and for siblings. Seafield does, Patterson Craig, Central Nassau Guidance does, Horizons, there's a lot of them. But
LICAT.
But also, if you're not on Long Island, go to the phone book and look for Al-Anon or look for Nar-Anon, look for Families Anonymous. There are family programs out there that are free. You just have to pick up that phone, make that phone call, don't be afraid, walk through the door.
Yes. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming tonight. Again, Long Island in Crisis was brought to you in part by Shield Laboratories. Anyone that's struggling, please reach out. You can message me on Thomas's Hope. Please, we're here for you. There's so many people that are striving for recovery, and recovery is possible. Hope is always an amazing thing. I know a lot of people in recovery, and it's a great walk. Thank you again, guys, for coming tonight. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Another dark hotel room, musty people.